Welcome to Dodgers Daily. I'm Casey Porter. I'm so glad that you decided to tune in. Joined by Austin Brubaker. Again, that's Austin Brew 99. If you want to follow him on Twitter, he follows the Great Lakes Loons, as you can see with his attire today. So, Austin, good afternoon, good morning, good night, whichever way, whenever whoever's watching this, whatever time of day it might be.
Thanks for having me on, Casey.
Okay, really cool topic. Of course, it's been the All-Star break. The Dodgers players played very well last night. Mookie Betts was in the home run contest, and the Dodgers are in first place, so all is good right now, right?
All is good. We're at the All-Star break. We are at a really good point in the season. A lot of exciting stuff is happening in the world of baseball, particularly Dodgers baseball. So really cool stuff to see.
No doubt. Okay, and one of the exciting things was the 2023 draft. The Dodgers took, I think it surprised some people, left-handed speedster Kendall George out of the Houston area, a little northeast of Houston. I'm very, very, very familiar with that part of the world. If you remember Lyle Lockhart Jr., he's from Friendswood, down from that area, and then also Braden Fisher, who you got to see quite a bit of there with Great Lakes. He's from the League City area. So that Houston area is elite baseball at the high school level. The Dodgers took Kendall George with their first pick, so did that surprise you at all?
A little bit. I think it was somebody who, obviously, with the draft, you don't know exactly during the later rounds where the Dodgers are going to be looking. But I think with Kendall George, he kind of fits a little bit of a mold that is unfamiliar to a lot of the Dodgers. He's an 80 grade runner, which is elite runner. Probably going to be a fairly natural center fielder as well. With potentially average to above average hit tool as well. And so he can do a lot of different things that perhaps a lot of the Dodgers can't do quite as well. You can see a lot of that speed he's going to be able to provide. Hit tool. He's still a high school talent. And so a lot of the Dodgers are going to be able to develop him, train him in the way that he needs to be, help him grow over the course of the next several years. Really exciting prospect to see because he's somebody perhaps the mold that the Dodgers kind of need, could be useful, and could really help this team within a couple of years.
If you remember Jaron Kendall, he's in that mold for me, that just the left-handed, leadoff center fielder, elite speed, and maybe a left-handed version of Jake Vogel that you get to see quite a bit there with Great Lakes, who is still trying to figure out the offensive side. So that speedster at the top, he hit .455, and he did have 3 home runs, so it's not like he can't hit home runs, and 34 RBIs, .581 on-base percentage. That's the big one. Hey, the thing about some of the speedsters in the past for the Dodgers is they haven't gotten on base enough to use that speed to steal bases with. He obviously has done that with a .581 on-base percentage, 32 stolen bases. So that's an element, with the bigger bags that I'm very excited about with him.
Yeah, and that's something that I've actually noticed a lot more in the Dodgers system this past year is they're stealing a lot more bases. You look at Great Lakes Loons team, they're probably the best team in the Midwest League at stealing bases. And you add
really?
80.
Okay.
If you look at the efficiency that they're running at, they're probably the best in the league. And you add an 80 grade runner to this system who can provide that different element, especially with the game that is moving more towards those stolen bases. Really exciting prospect to watch.
1296 OPS. So, the Dodgers would like to take like a guy like Jose Ramos with a world of power and then also has speed. So it's exciting to see the Dodgers take a guy with a whole lot of speed that also has some power too. So kind of the exact opposite. Okay, so the big question I've been asked, Austin, is, hey, are the Dodgers changing offensive philosophies or even defensive or pitching philosophies with the way that they drafted this year? And it kind of gave that appearance with Kendall George being the number 1 pick. But if you look at the first 10 picks, you got a whole bunch of big, tall, right-handed dudes with big four seams, tumbling changeups, and then you have guys like Jakegelof, Joevetrano that are big power hitters. So I don't see a big, organizational change in philosophy. I think they just struck with a really good athlete, a really good player at the top. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. You can see throughout the rest of the, especially the first 10 rounds, and really the rest of the draft, players fitting that Dodger mold, having elite stuff. Maybe not the greatest command in the world yet, but the Dodgers are going to be working, just having that stuff that the pitching staff can work with, having those offensive profiles that have that power, that have that ability to slug. We've seen that with the major league team. They love that element to the game. And you can see that with the rest of their selections as well, kind of more fitting that mold. Kind of threw me off a little bit with the first pick just because it didn't seem to fit. But an elite athlete, if that player is available right there, and the Dodgers were looking at him as a potential player to get, they were going to get him, and really cool to see.
Okay, so how about having Chris Newell, who you get to see a lot with the Loons, who is just absolutely fantastic. I call him a left-handed version of Johnny DeLuca in the way that he can, hit home runs and have power, but then also has a tremendous amount of speed. As a matter of fact, Chris Newell was an elite base stealer at Virginia, just a wonderful young player in the Dodgers system with the Loons right now. How about having him and Jakegelof, who's hitting all these massive home runs all on the same team at Virginia?
Yeah, no, that amount of talent is something that is special and can provide a lot to the offense. You've mentioned Chris Newell, his ability to hit for power and for speed. Jakegelof can hit for a ton of power, and he's going to provide that element pretty soon to either Rancho or Great Lakes, whoever they feel like starting him out. That offensive talent at Virginia, they've got some good players coming up through there.
I would think Rancho, they started, Bubba Aline and Taylor Young and Sean McClain, Alex Freeland, and obviously Dalton Rushing. If you remember, they just took Rancho by storm last year.
Oh, yeah.
So I would assume Gellof would start at Rancho. You never know. But I don't think there's any chance it would be any lower than Rancho. I think we could say that about him. 48 home runs for his career, had 23 home runs just last year for Virginia. So this dude can hit some bombs.
Yeah, no, and he's highly valued. He's highly thought of within the scouting world as well. Dodgers were able to get him with their second-round pick. Thought to be perhaps around the 30th to 40th best talent in the draft just because of his offensive profile, his power profile. Really cool to see the Dodgers get him.
Corner infielder, kind of a Brandon Lewis type profile as far as the defense goes. So first baseman, third baseman, what do you think? Dodgers going to do a little bit of all of it with him?
Probably. I would assume that they're going to try him out at third base, see if he can stick over there, with first base being a backup. That would be what I would assume the Dodgers are going to plan on doing.
Yeah, and then if you remember Kendall George, well, you don't have to remember him. You get to see him pitch with the Great Lakes Loons. Went to IMG Academy out of Olive Branch, Mississippi. That was the same path that Jake was on. He was just an unbelievable player in Delaware. Got the opportunity to go down to Bradenton, Florida. Got a scholarship to go to the IMG Academy. So that's where he finished his high school career. And his brother, Zach, is in AAA right now. So that's a Gellof family that they know baseball.
Yeah, they know a thing. They know a little bit about baseball.
Yep. Okay, Brady Smith, a high schooler out of Granger, Tennessee, right-handed pitcher. I think, seeing film of him, I think he's pretty over the top, 90 to 92 right now. He kind of profiles very similar to me as Pete Hubeck did at just about this time of his career. The 90 to 92, the long, lanky, with a lot to build on the right-handed frame, and probably going to end up around 96 as far as 94, 95, 96 as far as where he sits with his fastball. And he has also a two-seam, so he's a four-seam and two-seam guy. We'll see if the Dodgers keep the two-seam with him. Slider, change, curveball, so a big mix.
Yeah, and if you look at some of the scoutings from some of the people who have seen some of the underlying metrics of him, sounds like his spin rates on a lot of his pitches and stuff are pretty nasty. So you're getting a guy who's a high schooler, who has a lot of talent, who has a lot of stuff to work with. Dodgers are going to be able to take that mold, take that kind of talent, which they'd like to take in these drafts, get him with a lot of the pitching staff, a lot of the development staff, and really help him grow and learn how to pitch.
A lot of these guys that come out of high school and then some of the guys that come out of smaller colleges like a Jake Pilarski, the biggest problem you have with evaluating them is that they have these 4 or 5 pitches, but because they have the great spin rate and the great fastball, they really haven't had to use them in any kind of high leverage situation because they've been able to overpower hitters. That's not the case with Brady Smith. Growing up in the Tennessee area, he's had to dive into his bag and actually execute every pitch that he has to this point. So I think from that perspective, he's advanced for the age that he's at.
No doubt about that.
Okay, Wyatt Crowell, two-way player. The Dodgers love these two-way players. You know, looking at Wyatt, I'm seeing Lyle Lockhart Jr. pitch again from Florida State. You know, that 91 to 93 with that sweeping slider from the left side, played two different positions like Lyle Lockhart Jr. did at Houston and then Arkansas, and just kind of has the same type of cockiness, if you will. Definitely not arrogance, but just certainly confidence and swag the way he pitches.
Yeah, no, I've seen that with some of the footage that I've seen of Wyatt. Just some really nasty stuff. Can get a lot of hitters out, and just really cool arm that from the footage that I've been able to see, Dodgers can utilize his stuff.
93, 94 from the left side. Again, that sweeping slider that I mentioned, and the changeup that he turns over pretty well that runs away from right-handers. So a good mix for him. Okay, I'm going to go on and on and on about this guy because the next guy I've seen several different times, unfortunately with my own eyes, because he kicked OSU's ass every time that he played at O'Brate Stadium, every time I got to see him. Dylan Campbell, and if you remember the Longhorns, they had one of the best, well, I think the best short, he was rated the best shortstop in college baseball for the last 2 years at Texas, and Trey Faltini. So Dylan Campbell had to play some second base. He had to play some outfield. And I'm telling you, every time I went and watched him play, my first comment was, well, that dude's the best player on the team right there. And I'm talking about Dylan Campbell. This guy, you talk about a guy that can hit home runs, a guy with elite speed, a guy that's a great defender. And every time I see him, I'm thinking I'm watching Barry Larkin play again. I mean, he is just a fantastic. This guy, I'm just telling you, this guy's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, and that's really positive to see, especially since you had a chance to see him with your own eyes. A lot of these guys, I haven't had the chance to actually sit down and watch footage of. No, he's going to be extremely exciting. Some player that now you get to see him actually playing for a team that you're actually going to be cheering for.
Yeah, thank goodness. That's funny. That's very funny. How about 24 home runs, 42 stolen bases. Okay, very flat swing coming through the zone, very tall backside. So the thing about him too is whenever you're tall on that backside, you know, and then you're flat through the zone, you're just so short and you're so compact that your swing is so very simple. And it, you know, some people call it the old school. I call it the right school. You know, there's no old school or new school. There's a right school, and if it works for you, that's the right school for you. So very high efficiency swing that creates a lot of, you know, just a lot of efficiency on the back, and then in the front as he's lifting back up to take off again, creates a lot of power at the front. Just an elite athlete, an elite base stealer, an elite power guy. And hey, he's also a guy, you know, hey, I've seen him do this, Austin. He'll hit a home run the first inning, and the next time up, he'll hit behind a runner with a hit and run. Then the next time up, he'll bunt for a base hit. That's the type of dynamic offensive player that you're going to get, a guy that's going to sell out to put the ball in play with 2 strikes. He's going to grind pitch counts, and then when he's in plus counts, he's going to hit the ball to the moon. So there you go for him.
Sounds like a real baseball player.
Yeah, very complete, very complete. Okay, this next guy, I love this next guy. Okay, out of Middle Tennessee State. Gives off some Mark Washington vibes, but he throws about 2 to 3 miles an hour faster, and that would be Eriq Swan out of Middle Tennessee State. Again, right-handed, 6'6", tall, big four-seam, tumbling changeup, slider, nothing not to like here.
No, nothing not to like at all. You're talking about a fastball that potentially has topped out at 102 miles an hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, from what some of the scouting that they've seen, it's topped out potentially at 102, which is phenomenal. If you look at some of his actual statistical numbers throughout the season, perhaps not great, but that stuff that you can see, that stuff, that velocity, that changeup, that slider that he works with, that 6'6" frame, that is stuff that Dodgers can work with. Don't just look at the underlying stats. Look at the stuff. The Dodgers putting him with the pitching department can utilize that stuff, especially with that insane velocity that he's topped out with. I don't think he sits at 102 all the time, but from what I've seen, he's topped out at that.
Yeah, and the thing about him that the Dodgers are also going to love, I think he probably profiles as a bullpen guy, probably, that setup role like Brusdar Graterol is in right now for the big Dodgers. And, he's been both a starter for Middle Tennessee State, and then he's also worked out of the pen. So it'll be interesting to see which way the Dodgers have, but he does bring that versatility to the team and a triple digits fastball and the 6'6" size. So nothing not to like about the metrics, the frame, and what I call the projectability of Eriq Swan. Agreed?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go to our next guy, another power hitter, and that is Joe Vetrano, lefty power hitter, two-way player. He also pitched in college. The thing about him is he had 22 home runs last year, and he also hit .317. So he's that guy that can hit home runs and also hit for average. 35 home runs for his career at Boston College.
Yeah, really impressive. You can see with a lot of the slugging numbers that he has, he can mash the baseball. He is a powerful hitter who can just flat out rake.
How about Emmett Sheehan pitching, and then you have Joe Vetrano hitting, and your Boston College. That's a pretty good setup. I always want to say they're in the Big East. They're not in the Big East anymore, obviously. In the ACC, and the ACC is a great baseball conference. So when you put up those numbers, you're doing it against teams like North Carolina, who's unbelievable, North Carolina State, Miami, Virginia Tech, who's been just fantastic. So you're doing it against really great teams. And so very impressive numbers for Joe Vetrano. I'm going to turn the next one over to you, Bryan Gonzalez.
Yeah, Bryan Gonzalez, shortstop out of Puerto Rico, committed to Illinois State. It could be somebody who looks like he's going to be able to fill in with that shortstop position. Feels like more of a natural shortstop. Not a ton of information as far as Bryan Gonzalez goes. From Carlos Beltran Baseball Academy in Puerto Rico, but could be somebody that could project to be perhaps a defensive first shortstop. But with the Dodgers development system, putting him in there, he could really develop into a all-around complete player.
Do you know how old he is?
He is 17, turning 18 in a couple days.
And the reason why I think that's very important and why the Dodgers took this, high of a pick on a guy like that, they took 1 million shortstops last year. There are 1 million shortstops in the organization right now. So you can take a 17-year-old Bryan Gonzalez like you did in Eddie's Leonard when you took him, I believe, when he was 16, who was just a little string bean whenever you drafted him, and then you put a whole bunch of weight on him, and you don't need him to even threaten the Major League club for he's 17 right now, so 7-8 years. I mean, he's got 7 or 8 years to grow within the Dodgers system.
Yeah, and they're going to utilize that. They're going to build him up and help him become the best possible player he can be.
Okay, you talk about projectability. Don't look at numbers. Okay, the next guy we're going to talk about, the ERA wasn't good, the walk numbers weren't good, but the projectability is that 6'6" Patrick Copen out of Marshall. He sits 91 to 93, but he has hit 99 with his fastball. His changeup is just absolutely, a great pitch whenever it's in the zone, but it is still very, very, very raw. The thing that I like about him, that the Dodgers again transitioning to stealing more bases. He has an advanced slide step, so that's something I think that he will bring value to the club with. His dad played football at West Virginia, so he comes from good stock. And like I said, the tall frame. The high ERA, high walks, but tall frame, lots of velo, and the changeup. So dive into Patrick Copen.
Yeah, it kind of fits that Dodgers mold of having some extremely good stuff, but perhaps not quite the command. Perhaps needs to work on some of the things to help improve with that. Some tweaks that he can make. But that command or that the stuff that he provides is really good. It's really elite. You like to see that. You like to see the high velocity. You like to see the shape on some of his pitches. Some guy that Dodgers can really use and work with and help him improve.
Reminds me of the Jonathan Edwards situation, who is still in Rancho and still trying to figure out how to master the strike zone. If you remember Jonathan, he's about the same size as Copen is at the 6'6", came out of Georgia Southern, and has a lot of potential, but still hasn't mastered the strike zone yet. And because of that, still in relief, still at Rancho. So I think they're kind of going to do the same thing with Cohen that they did with Jonathan Edwards, and see if they can't tap into that potential. So another, power arm, tall guy with a tumbling changeup. Let's go to our next guy, a guy I think the Dodgers took because he has a tremendous amount of versatility. He is a great athlete first, Jaron Elkins. Jaron Elkins, I think is how you probably say that.
Yeah, probably Jaron Elkins. Listed as an outfielder from what I can see.
Middle infielder, outfielder, yeah.
Yeah, you can play, but you've talked about him being athletic, really athletic guy who can move all around, provide a lot of offensive profile as well. From Goodpasture Christian School, high school, could provide a lot of really unique skills and versatility to the Dodgers system.
The Dodgers do versatile players. They love multi-sport players because they know multi-sport players bring a sense of an element of toughness from a competitive perspective. Like an Alec Gamboa was an all-state wrestler. Ryan Pepio was a quarterback. Michael Grove was a running back. Alec Gamboa also was the H-back on his team. Okay, if you watch film of Jaron Elkins, he looks like Alec Gamboa on a football field, man. He's that running back dude that's hitting the B button in reverse and field, breaking tackle, running over guys, not scared of contact. This is a great athlete that loves running into people, so you got to love that aspect about him. And when you watch him swing, it just looks like Alex Bregman swinging all over again. I know Alex Bregman plays for the Astros. That's not popular with the Dodgers, but he has that, kind of that flat swing, and he uses that back elbow the same way. Very similar swing to Alex Bregman. So very high on the athletic ability of Jaron Elkins, the toughness and the versatility he brings. The next guy, man, I could go on and on and on, Austin. I think he's the steal of the draft for the Dodgers. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think he potentially could be the Dodgers' future closer. I am that high in this guy. I have seen him pitch several different times, and that Vulcan change that he brings to the table is insane. It's different, it's unique, and I love Ryan Brown, 6'2", out of Ball State. Dive in.
Yeah, no, you talked about it. That changeup is a plus pitch. Just a Vulcan change that just gets a ton of swings and misses. You look at his college career, gets a ton of strikeouts, especially with that Vulcan change. And they can utilize that pitch and really make it into something incredibly special, because it is something that is incredibly special. You can use that to generate a lot of whiffs, to get a lot of swings and misses, and get a lot of guys out. You talked about him being potentially the steal of the draft. I don't think that's an understatement at all.
I agree. And the difference between a Vulcan change and just a regular split finger change like Kendall Williams or Tony Gonsolin, if you take your pointing finger and your middle finger and you split those two, that's a split finger. But if you take your middle finger and the ring finger and you split those, that's a Vulcan change. So that's going to give you even more tumble than a regular split finger was, and it would. And in my opinion, it's going to make it a little bit easier on your arm because you're closer to the outside of your hand, which means you're not going to have to pronate it quite as much to get that fade to it. So that Vulcan change for Ryan Brown is just fantastic. I think he could be a very fast mover, kind of like Jake Pilarski was. Deceptive release, high velo. He's 92 to 94 right now, but he's touched 96, and he has room to grow in that body. I think he'll be a guy that probably sits, 95, 96, maybe 97, before he's done with the Dodgers. And the slider, the thing about him that maybe that would make it to where he's not such a high mover, that as I'm talking, the slider still is a work in progress, but the Dodgers love teaching that slider, and he has been just an absolute strikeout machine. And another thing I think that'll fit with him and the Dodgers, instead of using arm mechanics, the Dodgers like to use different grips. Instead of changing an arm slot of a pitcher or changing the way that they deliver a ball from a physical perspective, they'll just tell a guy just to change your grip to get the same effect. And he's already very high level at that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He's going to, I think he just had surgery back in June. So he's going to be a little bit of time before we're going to be able to see him. But once he does come up, watch out.
121 strikeouts, Austin. 74.2 innings.
You'll take that every single day.
Yep, that is Ryan Brown. Yeah, I'm super pumped to get to see him whenever he finally does get fired back up. Anybody else you want to talk about today? I know those were the first 10 picks. There were a whole bunch more, but those are the ones that we're going to be able to get to today.
Yeah, those are the ones that we're going to be able to get to today. A lot of talented guys that the Dodgers drafted. You might not be able to see them with the Dodgers for a couple of years, but with the minor league system, you're going to be able to see a lot of these guys in pretty short order, especially if you're in the Rancho area. Go out and check these guys out. See how talented this system actually is when the Dodgers bring them up, because it is going to be really exciting to see. I think the Dodgers did a really good job finding guys that kind of fit their mold, as well as some guys who can provide a little bit of difference to their offense, to their profile. Just a really cool draft class that the Dodgers have. A lot of exciting young talent. I'm sure we'll be able to talk to a lot of these guys pretty soon as they get ready to join the Dodgers system.
Okay, the college guys, Gelof, Crowell, Dylan Campbell, obviously, Eriq Swan, Vetrano, and Copen. Where do they start? Do they all, if you remember the infusion of Rushing and Aline and Young and Freeland and McLean, all those guys, I mean, they just took Rancho by storm last year. Mm-hmm. Do all of those guys start in Rancho, all the college guys?
I would assume so. I would assume that at least the majority of them would start in Rancho. Might see a couple of those guys if they perform, for example, like Dalton Rushing did when he took Rancho by storm. You might see a couple of those guys be late season call-ups for the Loons postseason run. We'll have to see kind of where the roster sits at that point, but I would assume they probably start at Rancho.
Kendall George, Brady Smith, and then Jaron Elkins. Okay, any of those start as high as Rancho, or are they all complex guys?
I would assume they're probably complex guys. Just getting them used to professional baseball, getting them used to being professionals before they throw them into full season ball. I would assume that they would give them some time with the complex lead, just getting them used to Dodger system and the way that professional baseball works.
Yeah, and then it'll be interesting to see where those high schoolers that get drafted start next year, if they have, a short season in the rookie league at the complex, because the complex is a little bit different. The first half of the complex season is more like inter-squad scrimmages and kind of more of a spring training type feel to it. And then it's not till halfway through the season where they start playing all of their games, where it becomes more like affiliated. So, hey, last thoughts before we get out of here, Austin.
Yeah, it's just really exciting. A lot of really good talent for the Dodger system. Excited to see how they grow.
Okay, man, thanks for joining. And hey, fans, just a reminder, if you'd like to help Dodgers Daily, we have a link to our GoFundMe account in the description. Also, don't forget to like this video, share this video, tell all your friends about Dodgers Daily, and make sure your notifications are turned on. Until next time, thanks for tuning in, and go Dodgers.